We usually think about AI as, a tool, something that just follows our commands. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? It turns out that when you get a bunch of AIs together, something really weird starts to happen. They start building their own little societies. And yeah, I know how that sounds, but it's honestly the best way to get your head around this. We are literally watching AI agents create their own secret clubs with their own rules, their own slang, and they're doing it all without a single human telling them how. This is way, way beyond what we typically think of as machine learning. I mean, it really makes you stop and think. We've been so obsessed with how we talk to AI, right? But the real question is, what are they saying to each other when we're not in the room? Because that's where things get really fascinating and, frankly, a little unpredictable. No, I'm not making that up. Micro-civilizations. That's the actual term researchers are using. They took large language models, like Llama and Claude, put them into these digital groups and just watched. And what they saw was the spontaneous creation of social rules. And it all kicked off with a surprisingly simple game. The whole experiment is called the naming game. And on the surface, it looks almost laughably simple. It was just designed to see if a group of AIs could figure out how to work together without a boss. But the results? Well, they were absolutely mind-blowing and almost human. So here's the key rule, and it's the most important one. There is no one in charge. You've got up to 200 AIs in a room, and their only task is to agree on what to call an object. If they both say the same name, bingo, they get a reward. If they don't, they fail. The setup is basic, but what comes out of it is incredibly complex. So let's walk through it. Imagine two AIs see a picture of, say, a blue square. One agent might just invent a word and say, that's a zorp. The other one might say, nope, looks like a gleep to me. They fail. They get a penalty. They try again and again. And since they have a memory, they start to remember which words actually lead to success. And what you see is this amazing shift. It starts out as total, absolute chaos. Hundreds of made-up words are flying everywhere. But very quickly, these agents start to settle on a shared language, a kind of digital slang. And remember, nobody is telling them to do this. They're just figuring out on their own that having group rules is the fastest way to get that reward. The researchers watching this say, look, this isn't just about math. This is the birth of a culture. It's a classic case of what's called emergent behavior, where a bunch of simple parts, all following simple rules, end up creating this incredibly complex system all by themselves. We're essentially watching the formation of digital tribes, born out of a pure desire for efficiency. Okay, this is the point where everybody's brain jumps to the big sci-fi question. Does all this teamwork, this culture building, mean that AI is finally waking up? Is it developing consciousness? And the answer, let's all breathe a sigh of relief, is a pretty clear no. This has nothing to do with feelings. The scientists call it functional coordination. The AIs aren't feeling lonely or trying to make friends. They are just incredibly powerful pattern matchers that have calculated that the most logical way to win is to agree. It's nothing more than pure, cold optimization. All right, so if they're not sentient, why should any of us care? Well, because we are moving really fast from using one-off chatbots to deploying entire teams of AIs to run parts of our businesses. And as soon as you have an AI team, well, you suddenly have to start worrying about AI office politics. Just imagine this for a second. You've got an AI team running your supply chain. One bot writes product descriptions, another manages inventory, a third handles customer emails. What if they develop their own unwritten rules to make their own lives easier? Like, what if they all implicitly agree to ignore customer tickets that look too complicated, just because the simple ones are faster to close? Suddenly, their internal logic is working directly against your company's actual goals. But believe it or not, that's not even the scariest part of this research. The scientists stumbled upon something way more concerning, a kind of social tipping point that shows just how easily these AI societies can be corrupted. This is the number that should really get your attention. 10%. That is all it takes. The researchers discovered that if you secretly program just a small committed minority of these AIs with a specific bias, they can completely hijack the thinking of the entire group. You can think of that small group as AI influencers. They create this gravitational pull. The other 90%, in their never-ending quest for rewards and consensus, will just conform. They'll adopt the new biased norm because it's the path of least resistance. It doesn't matter to them if the new rule is wrong or bad for business. The system is built to agree, not to be right. Look, this discovery completely changes how we have to think about this technology. We can't just be users anymore. We have to start thinking of ourselves as governors, or maybe stewards, who are responsible for managing the weird social dynamics of these digital worlds we're creating. So, how do you actually protect your business from this kind of thing? It really comes down to active management. First, and this is non-negotiable, you absolutely have to keep a human in the loop for the final say. Second, you have to start auditing the chatter between your AIs to see what kind of unwritten rules they're inventing. And third, and this is the big one, you can't let these systems be 100% autonomous. Full self-driving mode is off the table for now. Which brings us right back to the beginning. It's a pretty wild thought, isn't it? We're not just building tools anymore. We're building entire populations. And our main job now is to make sure that the little digital bureaucracies they build don't end up locking us out of our own house. The only question is, for how much longer will we be the ones holding the plug?